Hello, everybody. Is my audio coming through all right?
Is here.
Okay, awesome. Great. Good evening. We have a super cool talk planned for you guys tonight. We have Tyler Tomaseski here going to talk about starting up an indie game studio. So we're looking forward to that. We just have two pretty quick announcements before we dive into the talk. Okay, so first off, just another reminder that we do have t-shirts available. We've gone through a lot of effort to try and keep the prices down for everybody. So we have 5 colors available, and we can ship to remote members without actually needing a separate shipping fee. So if you are remote, your $15 shirt payment will also cover shipping. So you can see the main design all big on this slide here. We now can accept payments. So if you're one of the people who has already pre-ordered a shirt, we now are able to actually accept money from you. So we can accept money through PayPal, Venmo, or Google Pay. Ordering the shirt can be done on the form to the left. You can either type in the link or scan that with your phone. And then we will have another announcement coming out here with the exact handles and everything to get your money to us so that we can get you your shirt. So yeah, if you're interested in that, it will help support the club while also giving you some cool merch. Next slide, Henry. And then I just wanted to announce pretty quick that next week our weekly event is just a social night. So if you're interested in just kind of hanging out with us, we'll have all of our voice channels open on the SGDA Discord server, and you can come chill with us, talk, play games. If you have any game development progress you'd like to share and talk about, feel free to live stream. It's just one big hangout, basically. So our Discord link is visible here if you're not already on the server, but we look forward to seeing you guys there. And with that said, we can pretty much get started with Tyler's talk. So I will leave it to you.
Am I good to go? Well, hi everyone. I'm Tyler Tomaseski. Look at the slide for spelling. It's a tough last name. I'm talking today about starting an indie game studio. I am a former alumni of UTD. I graduated from the Eric Johnson School of Engineering, or whatever it's called. I always get it wrong. I think that's right, though. I did computer science for my major, and then I took just about every elective that I physically could at ATech. So I know the department very well, back when it used to be in a trailer before it had a fancy building. But so I'm a co-founder of PolyKnight Games. That's a studio that I've been running since I graduated college. The first thing I did out of college, actually, while I was in college, was found PolyKnight Games. I'll talk about that a tiny bit more. I'm currently also working with Dream Toaster, which is a new startup of mine. I got some people I want to collaborate with and make some stuff with, and PolyKnight Games is a little fixed into who's involved with it. So I've got a second LLC that I'm spinning up for that. So if you see either of those, that's me. I'm a lead engineer. I'm a programmer. Like I said, I do computer science, but I'm also a director. I've done a lot of things on games. When you do indie, you touch a lot of stuff, but credited as director for some stuff. I'm also a community organizer. I run the Society of Play, or I'm one of the organizers of the Society of Play. Society of Play is a nonprofit that represents game developers. We're based out of Dallas, but we're open to anyone. So if you're looking to join another community alongside the SGDA, come join us at the Society of Play. I'll have a slide later with a URL for that. Just to say a little bit more about myself, like I said, I started PolyKnight Games. We made a game called Interspace. It took a long time. It was a labor of love. We launched that on Switch, PS4, Xbox One, PC, Mac, Linux, the whole gambit, had a publisher, all that jazz. So if you want to play a game that I made, play that. It's been a few years since it came out. I think it's on sale on Steam right now, actually. If you want to get it for like 80% off, go check it out. I also worked on the recent Doom 1 and Doom 2 re-releases, the ones that released on iOS, Android, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, I think everything pretty much. So I helped out with that one. That actually was also through PolyKnight Games. So my involvement with Doom 1 and Doom 2 is not necessarily having a day job. It's actually PolyKnight Games working on that project alongside a lot of other people, including Bethesda. Got a lot to say about that going on. I've done a lot of game jams, a lot of game jams. I have a lot to say about game jams, but there's a few of them I did. I've also worked in AR, VR. I also, like I said, Society of Play, but done a little bit of everything. And of course, we have Dream Toaster. What a lovely little new logo that we just made like a week ago. Anyway, so to speak to what I'm going to be talking about today, I want to talk about starting an indie studio, which is going to cover a lot of stuff. And actually, it can be pretty... I think the big thing is that I don't want to just say what everyone else is saying on the internet, and I don't want to tell you guys how to literally make an indie game. I want to talk a little bit more about the business side of things and a little bit more of what goes into creating a business, and a little bit more of what it kind of means and a lot of the things I've learned in the process. So anyways, how to start an indie studio, day jobs for chumps. I don't want to work for a company. Capitalism is a scam and I want out. That's the title of my speech. It's not really about capitalism, a little bit, but actually a lot, I guess. Anyways, so disclaimer, this is not like a history of how I got into games. This is really going to be me talking about a lot of the things I wish people had told me when I started my studio, PolyKnight Games, out of college. I don't want to dwell too much on what I did because I made a lot of mistakes and I did a lot of dumb things, and it's not really useful for me to tell you all that. If you want to talk about that more, catch me online. But yeah, so this isn't a history. It's not even a practical guide. There's going to be a lot for you to figure out on the way. This is just kind of some advice that I think would be useful to anyone who's interested in doing this. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what indie is, why you should make indie games. Not everyone, it's not for everyone, but my pros for the list. And then how to start a studio. If why indie is the pros, how to start a studio is the cons. Because I want to talk a good amount about some of the more difficult things that you're going to deal with and some of the difficulties you'll need to overcome. And then I'm just going to go through some random advice that I think is pretty useful. Anyways, diving into it. What is indie? A lot of people argue about this, and I don't think there's a good one-sentence answer. Some people think of these games, they think of Undertale, they think of Spelunky, they think of Gone Home, they think of all these really big, super huge, multi-million-dollar indie games. Some people think of smaller indie games like this, games like Devil Daggers or Spiderweb Software. Or some people think of local games. These are some games that are made out of Dallas, including a practical game, Gun and Slinger. I don't remember if it's on Kickstarter. It's on like its last day, Gun and Slinger in the bottom right. So check that out. We also have Mercenary Lido in the bottom middle. It's my wife's game. Go pre-order it on Steam. These are some amazing games from Dallas. You might also think of college games. On the left here is a student project I did, and the other one is another student project from Dallas. It's 123 Date With Me. The Drizz is like my favorite thing I've ever seen come out of a game lab. It's just, that lizard is freaking precious. Yeah. So what defines an indie studio? It's financially independent, it owns its intellectual property, and it has a small development team. It's not necessarily a business entity. It like just could be a group of people making a game. But they are financially independent, so they don't have like large investors. You own your IP, and it's a small baby team. Now, funny enough, this could include something like Gearbox. Gearbox is independent. They are financially independent. They are relatively small compared to many studios. So for the sake of conversation, I'm going to call them an independent studio. I'm going to call everyone that's obviously smaller than them an indie studio, and I'm talking about stuff smaller. And if you want to build something like Gearbox, you got to start small. So this is kind of a conversation on how to get there, but I'm not giving you a roadmap on how to get super rich because I haven't figured that out yet. Anyways, there's a lot of different kinds of indie developers underneath Gearbox. There's your hobbyists, you have startups, and you have air quotes making it. Really the gradient here is that you have some people that are hobbyists, that are making games, they have a day job, they have some other form of income, but on their spare time, they make games. You have startups. These are people that are actually making revenue. These aren't like official words. These are just words I use. You have startups, which are indie developers that still develop on their spare time. They still have some kind of day job or day hustle. It could be software. It could be something entirely unrelated. But they're starting to make money from their indie. It's kind of a side gig. It's something that they do alongside to make some supplementary income. And then you have air quotes making it. These are people that do indie full-time. They're exclusively like own a business and run a business, and it's your business and it's where you make all your money. Now, I do air quotes making it because that having a day job kind of has its equivalent in owning your own business, where making it as a game studio doesn't mean that you're not working on stuff you'd rather not be working on, but we'll talk about that later. Whoopsie daisy. So what is indie? It's indie. Simple. Moving forward. Why indie? This is the fun part. This is the pros. Yeah. So ownership is a big one for me. Join the bourgeoisie. You want to own your own things. I grew up in a family where my father just owned small businesses. He owned gyms. He just built things from the bottom up. That's just was in my DNA, really. When I kind of started wrapping up my degree, I didn't really look for jobs. I was just like, all right, time to start my own business. That's just all I knew. And I think that sense of ownership, of not being a cog in the wheel, of owning what you are doing and building something that is yours, is super valuable to me. I get really uninspired when I am like on a W-2 salary. I hate it. It's gross. I like building something. I like ownership. I like just, it's mine. And I think that's like a feeling that a lot of us, and it's not just like for the sake of the business, it really is also the intellectual property, like what you're building, the games that you work on. It's your software, it's your vision, it's your thing. And really that, I'm gonna hop forward a little bit here, creative freedom. I think that being able to pursue what you want to pursue, for it to be your thing. I have my game Interspace on here because it's a weird game. It's a flying game inside of inverted planets, like planets inside out. That's weird. That's not going to get made by large studios. We have Caves of Cud. We have, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name. Anyways, third one's awesome. It just came out. It's called later. I'll remember later. But Paradise Killers. Thank you, Summer. But weird games only get made by, thank you, Summer. Weird games only get made by indie studios, and sometimes big studios take risks, but they're not this weird. You get the freedom to pursue and work on things that are yours, they're your vision, and they're unique. We also have small teams. A big thing that really defines indie is that you're probably gonna have less people than, like, if I was to list off every job that like goes into making a game, you're not gonna have that many people. So someone's gonna be doing multiple things. Like, you know, it's just like you're not gonna have an artist that gets to not do texturing, and you don't get to have an artist that probably doesn't do animations. People are gonna do a lot of stuff, Everyone needs to be a little bit of a jack of all trades. If you're like me, like I have a really heavy interest in music. I love art. I'm not a programmer that loves code for code's sake. I love programming because I'm good at logic and it lets me make video games. If I just wrote code, I wouldn't like want to make games if it was exclusively code. I really like that I'm involved in everything else. I like that it's a small team where I get to see what people are doing and I'm involved in everything at least a little bit. I like having my hands in everything. So that's really attractive to me. And if you get a job somewhere, chances are, like as a computer scientist, as a programmer, because programmers are sparse and harder to find, especially good ones, chances are like they're going to want you to really focus on code and not do anything else. They don't want you talking to the artist too much. They want you writing code. I don't like that. We also have affects change. If you're like me, you have a lot of strong ideals about the world. You have things you want to change in the world. You have opinions. You're very political. And you're not really going to affect any kind of change in this industry just by getting a job. Like, you don't get to like show up to a studio as a designer and tell them what games you think they should, and also like correct a bunch of people on like things that matter to you. Like, you're just gonna get fired. Like you're not gonna be too long for the world there, honestly, because for the most part, people need people to complete work. But if you want to like enact change, if you want to be a part of the industry being different, like really the only way to do that is to like become a part of it, but also like become a part of the owners of it, of the owning class of it, of people that are making decisions and deciding what gets done. And so there's a picture there of Spaceport, Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor. If you ever played it, it's like one of the most radical lefty games I've ever played. I love it. It's amazing. And I wish there were more games like it. But games like that don't get made by big studios. So, if you're interested in things like that, however, it doesn't necessarily have to be for political reasons. It really could just be if you wish games were made of a certain type, if you want the industry to look different, to have a different identity, to be more inclusive, to whatever. It's just, it changes by people starting new businesses and challenging other people. So just to wrap this up a little bit, creative freedom, ownership, small teams, affect change in the industry, and stick it to the man. That's why we do indie. And I think there's a lot of nuance between these things, and there's a lot of way to combine these ideas. But I think these are kind of, to some extent, the pillars that really make it special. Because there's a little bit of this in any kind of games job. Like, you're going to have some form of creative freedom no matter where you go, but it's kind of within your space. But I think like these values, these are like the moral pillars of why I keep doing this and why I keep pushing through and I keep trying to make indie happen. So, take a drink. That's what indie is. That's how indie is, or not how indie is. That's why I do indie. Now, a little bit more on how to start a studio. So how indie? This is obviously kind of the title of the talk. This is where I'm going to be spending a lot more time. I also want to say, like I said earlier, if what I just said is the pros of this list, this is the cons. And I really don't want to dissuade anyone from starting a studio. I do think realistically, it isn't for everyone. It's really hard what we do. But I also want to be realistic, and I want people to know some of the difficulties and some of the harder things that you need to factor in when starting an indie studio. So this isn't really going to be a practical guide. I'm not going to tell you which government forms you need to file to create an LLC to start your business. I'll tell you that you need to start an LLC. But anyways, so I'm going to go into a little bit of the how indie and some of the major problems. And really, this area is just like really a lot of the major problems that you'll face and that you need to confront. But also just like, just some general things. But anyways, be awesome at making games. Like, that's a big one. Making games is hard enough. And I'm not going to talk way too much about this. But like, you need to be really awesome at making video games to do indie and be successful. Now, I think you can do indie just for the sake of doing it. But if your goal is to like build a business and create a studio and really go places with it, you just need to be really good at making games. Like, if you do not know how to complete a game, you need to answer that question. Yeah. And I think the big thing you can do here to help out with this is you need to practice with small projects. You need to be doing student projects that are really fully featured. You need to be doing small little games that you can finish in a couple months to practice making a game start to finish, getting all the audio in, making all the menus, making a settings menu, making a fully featured game, but practice with like smaller projects. And also just don't make your dream projects. If you start with something huge, I'm guilty of this. Super Interspace was a huge project. It was incredibly reckless and a very stupid decision to make Interspace. It worked out for us, luckily, but I don't think it would for most people. And so I say that like we got lucky. I think everyone, including myself, I wish I'd started smaller. I wish I'd shipped tinier, smaller $5-4 games a couple times over before I dove into a larger like premium indie like towards $20. Because boy, like I'd made a lot of student projects. I'd made a lot of game jams, and hint, you should make a lot of game jams, but I'd never really like finished a game that I would sell for money. You know, I never finished something that was really polished. And so I think that if you want to get really good at making games, start small, lower the risk involved. But also, like I said a second ago, make lots of game jams. If you're not doing game jams right now, do more game jams. Do as many game jams as physically possible. If you have time, do game jams, because game jams are going to let you try out a lot of ideas. They're going to let you explore a lot of things, see if they're good, see if they're bad. And that's going to be a really great space for you to not only practice getting really good at making games, like making really polished products very quickly, but also like they're going to let you figure out what you do and don't like and experiment with ideas and get a lot of the crap out of your system that's just not that good. It's just, you got to get it out, you got to purge, and you're going to do that through game jams. So a bit more of a holistic view. I think a lot of people kind of get into this, and their list is make a game, put your game on a storefront, make Mad Indie Bank. And for the most part, if you're like releasing on itch.io, that is kind of it. Like that's like the process, but that's not it. Like this is not how you make a studio. Really, this list sadly looks more like this. You need to build a team, or don't. You could do it alone if you wanted to, but then you need to know how to do everything. You need to file for an LLC. Your business needs to exist. And then you need to make a game. We're skirting over a lot with that. There's a lot in that bullet point right there. Make a game's a pretty big one. You need to do it with as few people as physically possible. I say this for a lot of reasons that I'll get into later, but smaller teams are better for indie. You need to pay contractors. If you have anyone like sound, maybe you don't need a full-time sound person, so you're just going to pay someone to do it when you need it. You need to figure out where that's coming from, but you also just need to like pay them. If you have people around longer, you got to cut them checks. You need to put your game on all storefronts. You're not going to make a lot of money on itch.io, and you're not going to make a lot of money on Steam, but if you get it on all of the platforms, you might do a little bit better. And to do that, you're going to need to buy dev kits. If you want to be on Switch, you need to buy a Switch dev kit. You need to port your game to Switch. You need to buy a PS4 dev kit. You need to port your game to PS4, and then you need to go through the certification process for each of those platforms. That's going to take a lot of time. It's also going to take a lot of work just to get your game working on these platforms. I can tell you right now, there's not like a perfect answer on which one to go with when it comes to platforms, but you need to be on more than Steam, because Steam is not where people make money nowadays. You need to do marketing. If you don't have a publisher, you're going to need to do the marketing yourself. You're going to need to get the word out somehow. Maybe that's ad buys, maybe it's whatever. You could also get a publisher, but then you got to get a publisher, which means you need to go to conventions and get people to look at your game, but you can't go to conventions right now. So how do you get publishers to look at your game? And you got to negotiate and figure out contracts and figure out what they're responsible for. That's still a lot of work. You need to budget for post-release. You can finish your game and get it out there, but people are going to run into some bugs you didn't see coming. You're going to need to patch some stuff, and people like content and free updates. So you're going to need to do things like that. And that's a lot of work, and you need to budget and figure out, how you're going to afford to do that. And then you also need to deal with making underwhelming indie money. I said in the last slide, make indie bank. It's not real. It's a lot of indies don't make a ton of money. It's just how it is, I talked about that slide earlier with like Undertale on it. Boy, I've got a huge rant for that, and I'll save it for a little bit later. Maybe you want to secure continuous contract work. One of the ways that you could deal with not making a ton of money from your game is to do contract work alongside it. That's when I said earlier, the making it indies. A lot of indies nowadays make indie games, but they also do some contract work on the side as a company. And that's how they actually make enough money to keep their company afloat. You might need to fire people that can't help with contract work, because if you're spending a year doing contract work and a year making an indie game, but you got someone that's not too useful for the contract work, you might need to let them go. And that's tough. That's hard. You need to pay your taxes. That's a whole thing. You need to file your quarterly earning reports. You need to file your annual taxes. that we are before I start sounding like an idiot. Andrew, by the way, I do have you on. I do have it. Oh, cool. All right, we're live again.
Yeah. Woo.
Hi, everyone. I guess internet went out for like where everyone lived, except for me and
Yep.
Andrew. And I figured out OBS really quick. Now I'm the streamer.
He's taking over SGDA now.
Yeah,
That's
this is
it. He has to
mine.
run DSOP and SGDA.
Yeah, I get the stream key now too, so I'm just gonna like randomly hop in and streams moving forward.
Here and there. Yeah.
just mess with everyone. No, so I'll get back to it, just in case, just for everyone still hanging out. Hi, we probably lost just about everyone from UTD, but I'll keep going just for the VOD or whatever, you know. So, all right, let me make sure I got everything pulled up here. And Summer, do I sound good?
Yeah, you sound great.
All right, awesome. Hopefully this is better, actually, since we're going direct instead of through Discord. Okay. Reset. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my talk about how to start an indie studio. So last I talked, I was going through the kind of overbearing list of crap you have to do to start a studio. And one of the things I said early on in this talk is that this talk isn't prescriptive on exactly what you need to do to start a studio. I think in the end, like, you kind of just need to like run a business on your own, and I think there's a lot of people you can talk to help you step through a lot of the details of these things. Like, I'm not going to help you step through how to file an LLC, and I'm not going to tell you how to make a game even, because that's hard and takes a while. And also, I'm not a lawyer. Like it says, you should also get a lawyer, an accountant, and a CPA. But I do write all this just to kind of make the point that building a business is hard. You know, we're not even talking about like profit loss, employment, like how to get health insurance or anything like that, you know, and just there's a lot to do. And that's just kind of the basics to make a game. And this statistic really stands out to me. This is like based off of like a poll on Twitter, but it's a really good number and it feels about right. But 70% of games don't make enough money to cover cost of living. That means that there's like over 2/3 of people making indie games like have to make money somewhere else to keep doing it. So only about less than 1/3 of us get to like do it full time and not have a day job. And I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind, that it's a really crowded market and it's not going to get handed to you. And I still think it's worth doing, but you gotta know that you're fighting upstream on this, that the numbers are against you, but hey, like, you can still do it. It's just, you know, it won't happen quickly and it won't happen easily. You know, a lot of people in that 70% will still get into the 30%. They will get there eventually, and you might be in that 70% for a while. But I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about kind of ways to try to get out of that. The ways to get into the 30%, the 30% of people that get to do it full time, the people that don't have to have a day job. One other note before I move on way too far is that also just building a business is expensive. I don't mean that because like you have cost of living. I mean like literally, even if you're like, you know what, I want to do this, I'm gonna have a day job, I don't care if I'm not making money. Like, it's gonna cost you a few $100 just to like file an LLC and start a bank account and do some of the basics you're gonna need to do just to like sell your game. So like, if you're not willing to throw like $300 at this at the minimum, like, you can still make games, put them on itch, sell them for like, put them up there for free or like a couple bucks or whatever. But, you know, it's going to take a little bit of money to just get started. So, you know, have a little bit of money saved, even if you're going to keep your day job, like just have a little bit of cash to throw at this just to cover some starting expenses. But one of the biggest things I have, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I wish I'd been given this earlier, is that you just need to reduce cost. One of the best ways you can get from the 70% of people that don't make enough to cover cost into the 30%, it's not to get better at making games, it's to spend less money. And a lot goes into this. But really, so many talks that I've been to at GDC, so many developers that I've talked to, the people that are kind of at the cusp of the 30% making it in this industry, the people that are just, you know, scraping by, but they're there, they're making it, it's their full-time job. Companies like PolyKnight Games that are hustling and doing work and working on cool projects, but still just like, you know, we're scrappy. It takes a lot to keep our heads above water. That one of the ways that we went from Interspace, because after we finished Interspace, we had this realization of just like we weren't going to be able to like cover everyone. Like just literally, we had 7 people working on Interspace full time, and we weren't going to be able to keep everyone around just because like the numbers weren't there, the money wasn't there, the contract work wasn't there. So a lot of what I've learned since Interspace, it really has been just a cut back cost. It's just to develop cheaper. And so I want to go through a few things and a few ways that you can do that, because it's going to make being successful as an indie developer a whole lot easier. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I move on, too, the main reason of this is maybe a better way to frame this is just, you know, the less money that you spend, the less copies of your game that you need to sell. You know, like some of the most successful indies just like see what their games can sell and they find ways to work with that. Jeff Fogel, am I saying that right? I think that's a yes. Jeff Fogel, a great game developer. They've been making games for indie games for years and years and years and years and years and years. And I went to their talk at GDC, and and you can find it on YouTube. One of the biggest things that just struck me that they never really grew a whole lot. Like at their largest, if I remember correctly, they're like 4 people, and like there's still only like 1 developer really. It's just like some other people to help with like shipping out stuff and like covering business things. Like for the most part, it's just 1 person making indie games for years and years and years and years. And it's a lot easier to make games full time when you're only paying 1 person, because you just need to sell less copies. And Jeff's really comfortable selling less copies. Another way you can cut back cost, develop quick, which is legit. You got to make games quick. You got to make games faster. You know, if it's going to take you 6 years to make your game, I mean, granted, if you got a day job, that's one thing. But I mean, if you're doing it full time and it takes you 6 years to make your game, like you got to make 6 years worth of money. That's a lot of time. Like you kind of got to think in the scope of like a year of how long you get to spend on your indie games. And if it takes you a year to ship your game, a chunk of that has to be pre-production, and a chunk of that has to be marketing and certification and other things. So maybe you get closer to 8 months. What kind of game can you make in 8 months? Smaller team. I talked through that a good amount earlier. Cut corners, shorter dev cycles, smaller games. Obvious answer to the last thing. Another thing you can do is just become a game dev Rambo. Like I said earlier with Jeff Fogel. Like if you can, the best and most successful indie studio is 1 person because they only got to feed 1 mouth. And if you can do that, that's awesome. A lot of people can't. A lot of people want to make 3D games, and it's really hard to have 1 person make 3D games, do 3D art, lighting, UVing, rigging, animating, code, sound, all that. But, you know, try your best to have as many, like, have people doing lots of things. Be part of that kind of jack of all trades mentality. Cut back on bad ideas early. Do lots of game jams. Test your ideas. One of the worst things that I've run into and I've struggled with for so long is working on a game for like 6 months and then realizing that it sucks, or then realizing that it's going to take you way too long to make. That you've spent 6 months on a project and suddenly you realize that it's going to take you another 3 years to finish it, and there's no way that game's going to make enough money to be worth spending 3 years on. Get feedback. Show your game to as many people as physically possible. Get feedback. Get people looking at your game as early as possible. And if you can't get your game playable quickly, it may not be a good game to develop. It just may not. Cut corners. Streamline your art pipeline. I'm going to hop forward to slide for a second. So this is Interspace, my game that we made. I worked on it forever. It was like good 3 years. I guess a lot of that was starting up the business, whatever. Anyways, it was like 2 years of like really intense development. One of the things that we started off with was knowing that we wanted to create a fully realized world, but that was going to take forever to make, and we didn't really have the time or assets to do that. So one of the first things that we did was that we said, all right, we're going to do everything through vertex colors. We're not going to texture anything. Nothing's got textures. Everything is driven by UV coordinates and vertex colors, and that's it. When you play through our game, if you see a little bit of texture on it, that's just an auto-unwrapped normal map on a 3D thing just to give it a little bit of texture when you get really close to it. It's really quick. It's really dirty. Blender does it automatically for you. We took that constraint and we crafted an art style around it. We created something that was impressionistic, that felt like it was painted with large strokes, that things were broad gradients and colors. And we leaned into it and we created something that was pretty, not in spite of it, but because of it, that we took our constraints and we just developed with it. So streamline your art pipeline, make it quicker and easier for you to get things into your game. Because a lot of this is that you really just need to focus on what players appreciate the most. If you look at in Undertale, like, and I'm not trying to put down Undertale at all. Undertale's a freaking masterpiece. But like, one of the things that stands out to me the most about Undertale, the art assets are really simple. There's not a lot of animations. It's really simple, just still frames. The environment's not that polished. It really acknowledges that its strong suit is the writing and the personality and the amount of diversity in the game that you're playing and the amount that's baked into each encounter. They strip out just about everything the game doesn't need, and they just focus on what the game needs and what's best about it. And that allows them to focus their efforts on what matters and spend less time on what doesn't matter. And most players are going to get past that. Another thing you do is contract work or day job. Like, it kind of sucks, but like a lot of the best developers I know just like have day jobs. And they're just that kind of middle ground where you have like a side hustle of indie development is super okay. And they do indie development and they're consistently making new games, but they're okay having a day job. It's more stable, it's safer. Or even better, like inside of your studio that you are founding, doing contract work, finding alternate sources of income a core pillar. Because the thing is that if you work a year on a game, like most game studios cannot survive one flop. Like most game studios, if they make one game that tanks hard, maybe they can survive it, but they sure are not surviving a second one. Most studios, like every game needs to make enough money. And contract work's a really great way to supplement that. That if a game flops, you already got contract work lined up. You have things that your company is going to be doing to make money separate from making indie games. Now, you do kind of sacrifice a lot of the pillars of the pros of indie development to do this, because you're going to lose freedom for a while. You're going to have to work on something you don't really want to. But like you saw, like I worked on Doom 1 and Doom 2. Like that's awesome. Like I was super stoked to like work on this IP and to just be able to have my name in the credits of any release of that game that's official. And granted, I think I got really lucky with that. I think the majority of the contract work that I do is boring and soul-sucking and not worth talking about, but it's just kind of a part of what a successful indie studio means to me, what it meant to my studio, that we just had to do work to get by. And that's just like kind of part of it. A lot of my favorite people that do games just have to do contract work. It's part of it. So, this is all a bit heavy and a bit of a downer. Also with the internet internet going down, we're a little bit behind schedule. But I don't want to dissuade. I said this earlier. I don't want to dissuade anyone. I don't want this to scare anyone off. But it's just you gotta look at this and just acknowledge the difficulties of it. And like, because I wish someone had told me this, it would have saved me a lot of time of my life, and I would have done it anyways. I'm stubborn. You got to be stubborn to make it in this industry. One of the things that someone did tell me early on that did actually mean a lot to me and really helped me frame how to think of indie development is that a successful studio makes 3 games, not 1. I know a lot of people that started the indie studio, make 1 game, and then like that's kind of it. They disband after that. It's really hard to sustain. They pushed hard and it just didn't quite make it for them. But when you start this business, when you get into indie development, if you want to start a literal indie studio, you got to be thinking about the fact that your goal is not to finish 1 game, but to finish 3, but to finish 4, but to finish 5. That 1 game getting shipped does not define success. It's 3 games. It's more than that defines success. That you need to keep going and keep making games. That you need to be worried about the business of getting from 1 game to the next is an important part of creating a studio. And again, some people just want to make 1 game. They just have an idea that they want to execute. They want to collaborate with people, and they're okay doing something new after that. So this isn't necessarily for everyone, but for me, I'm into building businesses, and that's like a really important headspace to be in. That the long-term success of your studio kind of comes before like that momentary desire to just make 1 cool indie game. I bring these up again because although I love looking at Spelunky, Gone Home, like these are some of my favorite games to look at for design. I adore these games. I idolize these games. But one thing I like to point out on this, I'm gonna switch to the laser pointer, um, is that these games are great references for execution and design, but chances are you're not going to make a indie game that is as successful as these. These games made tons of money. These games made lots of money. And that idea of making 3 games, not 1, you can't rely on your game making this kind of cash. You need to look at games that are smaller and less known, like, like Bingo, like who all can name all these games. Not saying like you're a better indies developer if you can name a bunch of indie games, but like each of these games are people that are still successfully making indie games, especially bottom left. Like these are people that made games that are not huge. They're not millions and millions of dollars, but they're going to make enough cash to keep going, and it's just a hustle. And these are the people that you want to idolize and you want to look up to. These are the games that you want to idolize because you obviously want to make lots of money like these. But these are the games that you kind of need to look to for inspiration on kind of the space that you're likely going to be in. So that's how to start a studio. I guess it really wasn't practical advice on how to start a studio. I did have the big list, and if you're looking to just have some like a list of things that you need to do to start a business, this is a decent starting point. There's plenty of articles, and I'm going to talk about something a little bit later. It's going to help people get through this, but if you want to take a screenshot of that, take a screenshot of it. Yeah, so that's a bit scary. When you're kind of start worrying a little bit more about just feeding yourself, that can be a little tough. But now I just want to get into just some general advice, like to like game developers that want to do indie development. Like some of this is related to stuff I've already said. Some of this is just other miscellaneous stuff that I wanted to say to everyone. Let's get into it. You are what you eat. If all you do is watch Avengers and consume a bunch of stuff that everyone else consumes, you're probably not going to make anything special. And as an indie developer, one of the big things you need to do is make games that stand out. So always be looking for unique inspirations. Be reading things that other people aren't reading. And I think I have this in a slide later, so I'm saying it a little early, but make games that only you could make and figure out what that is. Try to pull in things that are authentically you and things that you care about, and try to consume things that set you apart from everyone else. Surround yourself with awesome developers. Be competitive. I think this is a really big thing because I often see a lot of people going through college, going through university that are wanting to get into indie development, and they compare themselves to their peers. But like, not to be a jerk, but like, if you're just comparing yourself to a bunch of other students, like, there's a lot of indie developers that are like ex-AAA people that have shipped lots of titles. Like, you're batting up. You're swinging up. You comparing yourself to your peers is, if you're talking about other students, is not the headspace to be in. You need to surround yourself with developers that are well above where you're at. I forget who said this, but you are the average of your peers, and you want to find people that are above you. And granted, I think it's important to still be with people and be involved with people wherever you're at, because that's your community. Those are your people. But you need to be still surrounding yourself with more than that. Plug, like I said earlier, I am a organizer for the Society of Play. Oh no, I'm in the way. I'm going to move myself temporarily. Sorry. But Society of Play is another community that you can join. We have a lot of developers in here. We have new and learning people, but we also have people that have shipped titles and shipped games. You can also go to our website, societyofplay.net. Join more communities. Surround yourself with different people. Put myself back down there. All right. Stay inspired. Indie is a beatdown. Yes. Making games for long periods of time, especially in quarantine like this, is tough. It's really difficult to stay inspired. I was just talking to someone earlier about this. Thank you for the conversation, Tomer. It was a very good conversation. Boy, it's really hard to stay inspired. And I just want to talk about this for a while. But like, business is hard, game dev is harder, and getting the necessary endorphins to not give up is even harder. You're going to be fighting a lot of it's just an uphill fight doing indie development, or just doing game development generally is just tough. And keeping that little bit that pushes you forward is really, really difficult. And there's a whole conversation about this, but some advice: tackle rewarding tasks, stay organized, make progress every day, stay productive. I think a big part of this is just you really need to be structuring your life so that you can get through this, because it's going to be really fun for a little bit and then it's going to stop at some point. And you need to kind of structure yourself in a way that even in those times, you're getting through it. Because in reality, like, motivation's one thing, keeping yourself motivated is a thing. But as my wife likes to say, and pardon my French, like, motivation is bullshit. You're not going to be motivated every day to work. But one of the best things you can do is work every day. And something else I heard from someone, I think it was Toma earlier, but you shouldn't wait for motivation to start working. You need to start working to find motivation. And every day you should aim to get at least one thing done. Even if it's a tiny little thing, just every day you need to be chipping away at this, because it's the people that push themselves and the people that keep working when they don't want to, they're going to ship awesome titles. Oh, sorry. Cat food dispenser. Yeah, just discipline is more important than motivation. Discipline is incredibly important. And what's even more important than discipline is energy. You need to take care of yourself. You need to pursue self-care. Just have the energy to be able to sit at your desk and have the discipline to be able to force yourself to work on stuff a little bit every day. One of the biggest ways that I do that is that I track tasks. To me, even if it's not something that I can show to someone, if I just have like a little checklist of stuff I need to get done, and I get to check a little checkbox every day, that keeps me going. Like, that's enough. Just like cool, I have this big list that gets me to from start to finish on this game. And every day, if I check one box, I'm gonna be a baby step closer to being done with this thing. I use Notion for tracking tasks. It's an amazing service. You can do documentation like wikis, whatever. Just check out Notion if you're looking for a way to do that. Said this earlier, energy is more important than discipline. Discipline's more important than motivation. I love that. It's really good. And on that note, your product's more important than business development. I talked a lot earlier about oh, you need to be cheap, you need to work with less people, you need to do all these things to like spend less money. But in reality, you do need something to sell. You do need to complete a game. And sometimes people get a little caught up in the production and the idea of starting a business. They're like, oh, we're going to do a startup. Let's do a brainstorming session. We're going to come up with what game we're going to make. And they wind up getting kind of caught up more in the cosplay of starting an indie studio than they do like the actual work of starting an indie studio. That you do need to be making awesome games that people are excited to play, that your product comes before the business development. The business development is incredibly important. I know so many developers that have kind of skipped that step. They make an awesome game and then no one plays it because they didn't market it, because they didn't do all the things they need to do to get their game out in front of people. But, if you have a really awesome game that doesn't get in front of people, like, that's a nice problem to have. Your goal, first and foremost, is to make a game. Building a team. This is tough. I do give a lot of advice to people that they need to work with as small a team as possible. But you do at some point need other people. Like, I almost exclusively like working in 3D games. I just like 3D games a lot more. It's just kind of the headspace. It's just what I gravitate towards. I do not have the skill set to be making 3D art. So at the very least, I need someone to help me out with 3D art. I like having someone to help me out with design, someone to talk to about gameplay. That's why Eric Grossman and I get along so well. It is often important to build some kind of team, even if it's literally just 2 or 3 people. And I did that out of college at a UTD. When I started PolyKnight Games, there were like 5 or 6 of us, and we had all made lots of games together. We'd done like 3 game lab classes together. We'd done tons of game jams together. We'd worked together on lots of things. We knew what it meant to work with each other. We weren't just 2 randos like, hey, let's start a studio. Not that you can't do that. Just I think it's really important that when you build teams, you get to know the people that you're working with before you start working with them, or like in a professional context. Do game jams with them. Do student projects with them. Do things to get to know what it's like to work with people, because one of the worst things you can do is start a business and have someone literally own a portion of your business, and then you realize that, like, down the road that was a mistake. Try to be confident in people before you invest in them with starting a business. Yeah, small projects too. Like, maybe do a little like $5 game, something small. All right, make unique but familiar games. I think some people go way too like nostalgia fest, and it's just like, oh, it's just this thing that I really like. but it's not different. And some people go, oh, I'm going to make like really artistic, really unique, really out there, weird games. I do think it's really important to find some kind of middle ground for those. Do focus on designs that are unique, that let you stand out, that when people are looking through games, that like, whoa, what's this? This is interesting. You want something that is unique and that stands out, but is also approachable. Granted, like, I don't like telling other people how to make games, because the second you tell someone how to make a game, someone's going to make like $1 million off of the exact opposite of what you told people to do. So if you think you got a great idea, prove me wrong. But I do think it's really good to focus on something that makes you stand out while also being approachable. So like Inner Space is like a really weird inverted planet spatial exploration game, but it's still a flying game. Like, it's still for people that like flying games. Get a mentor. I wish someone had told me this earlier. I also wish I'd gotten a better mentor. Get someone else that does this. If you are wanting to do indie or any kind of variant of it, find someone else that's already doing what you want to do, that's very successful at it, and just see if they can mentor you. See if they can meet up with you, do a Discord call like once a month for like 30 minutes to just talk about what you've been up to and to see if they have any advice for you. Find someone that is just willing to impart and keep an eye on you. They're not even like a part of your business, but they're just mentoring you. Find someone that is experienced in what you want to get done, is kick-ass at what you want to do, and get them to mentor you. I cannot say enough how important this is. I had mentors often, but often they weren't people that had previously succeeded at what I wanted to do. I wish that I'd found mentors that were successful at doing what I was actively trying to do, because doing that helps so much. Operation, no day job. There's a lot to say here, but for the most part, I do think a lot of us don't want to have a day job. A lot of us don't want to do contract work. And I do think you kind of need to be willing to eat dirt on that, to just kind of like be willing to do like work to fund your dream. But I do think it's important to keep that kind of eye on the ball. Like, you want to quit your day job, and sometimes you need to make difficult decisions because it's going to help you achieve that. It's going to help you achieve not having a like kind of daily income. Boy, that's been a long list, and I've said a lot of things, but kind of a TLDR is stay inspired, join a community, get a mentor, reduce your costs, potentially get some contract work or have a day job, and make games as quickly as you can. I cannot say enough how important it is that you come up with game designs that allow you to finish games in a year, because, you know, if you only have 2 people, cool, less mouths to feed. If you only have 2 people and it takes you a year, you only need to make enough money for 2 people for 2 years. If you take 2 years, you need to make twice as much money, which means you need to sell it to twice as many people. If you can make games faster, make decisions that let you make games faster. And that's the pro tips. So we've gone over a lot. I tried my best to sprint towards making up for the time loss a little bit here. And I've been all over the place, honestly. I really have. There is so much to say about what goes into indie development. And I just wanted to say a little bit of everything that on my heart I wish I'd heard earlier. And I can't say enough. Read articles, talk to other people, join communities. There's a lot of obvious stuff that I'm leaving off the table. I'm really trying my best to say a lot of what maybe felt obvious if someone had said it to me in the past, but I feel like it didn't really resonate with me the way that it resonates with me now. So hopefully some of this has been useful. We're going to take some questions. If anyone's got questions, feel free to post them in the Twitch chat. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. I mostly use Twitter. You can also catch me on Discord with this handle. God damn it. Pardon if that's offensive to anyone. Oh, I'm in the way of this thing. Hold up. I'm going to move me. No, that's not me. Stop. This one. Wow. Background is made by the lovely Fizztap. Fizztap is an artist that I'm making some stuff with right now. They made this background as part of their Patreon. They are awesome. Support them. Back their Patreon. But yeah. Andrew, do we have any questions from the Twitch chat?
So Twitch chat, I haven't seen anything yet. I think there's some stuff coming in on the Discord here soon enough.
Go for it.
Type up.
I will rant a little bit while we wait.
Absolutely.
And I know that this chat is definitely for UTD people, and if half of UTD's internet is down, we are missing a whole lot of our audience.
Yeah.
Hopefully people
Unfortunately.
We can always talk to each other too.
There we go. Conversation.
Conversation. Whoa, that's weird. What's that?
Yeah.
Oh man. I have so many slides. So many things. You know, I really can't say enough how much like you need to find better examples to look at. sorry. So like, man, like I love looking at these games for like design tips, but I think the big thing is that like look to games like for like really, really successful games for their designs and their process. But do keep in mind also some of the biggest indie games like Fall Guys, I believe, was made by quite a few people. Like keep an eye on like the credits and how many people actually touched a product, and do yourself some favors earlier on, and like do yourself some like notebook math of like, all right, like Steam Switch, wherever is gonna like take 30% of my income. So all right, so I get to keep 70%. Then you got to set aside some money for taxes. All right, after all that, like how much money do I need to make off my game to like be worth it? Like just to cut even on people's time, you know? It's nice to be able to fund future stuff and all that, but how much do you need to make? How many games do you need to sell? And once you know how many games you need to sell, look at other games similar to yours and try to find their sales numbers. Try to do some estimates to see how much they've sold. Because if you look at games like Undertale, they're just not useful references. You are not going to sell as many games as Undertale. Please prove me wrong. I will be so proud of whoever's listening to this that does that. But you're probably not going to outsell Spelunky or Stardew Valley or Gone Home. These are huge mega hits. They are very rare. You cannot look at them for references for sales. You can look at them for references for design and why they were successful. But when you're looking for sales comps, look at smaller games, look at games that were made by similar team sizes. And then also when you look at designs, keep in mind that like as much as a lot of people think Undertale is made by just like exclusively Toby Fox, a lot of people go watch the actual credits. A lot of people touch that game. Not putting them down. Like Undertale's love that game. But yeah, that's like a little rant I probably left out. Looks like we had a question.
Yeah, we got a couple now. So we have one. What's your proudest moment in your game dev career?
Oh boy. Marrying my wife.
Correct answer.
No, I haven't actually. I mean, I'll give it like a more game devy answer, but really, I did actually meet my wife through Society of Play. We kind of originally bonded over making games, and so I think that's pretty awesome. That's like I got myself a game dev waifu. Is great. But also, proudest moment. I think there was a little girl at PAX East that saw our booth that we had at PAX East. Realistically, it's because our booth had really bright orange carpet, but she was like up above the convention floor and saw like the glowing orange carpet, and she's just like, that game, and like dragged her dad over to our booth. And she like, boy, she didn't really get our game, but she loved it. It was pretty, and she thought it was aesthetically pleasing, and I thought it was really neat because she really loved our game despite not really as a player, as gameplay getting it. I think realistically, anytime I've watched a kid play my games and enjoy themselves, I just like, there's certain like endorphins that aren't in my brain anymore. Like I just don't enjoy stuff as much as I used to. But kids like do. Like kids remind me of a better time when I got to like just enjoy stuff. And it's just a blast watching kids play my game. So yeah, I just there's just a certain glee. Anytime someone gets really excited about my game, it makes me really happy watching people play it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's like multiple moments, but
Yeah, just delightful sounds.
it's a list.
Yeah. Another one. How do you get contract work as an indie studio like that?
I see that's from Eric. Eric's asking me an annoying question that he probably doesn't know the answer to either. Landing contract work's tough. It is. There's not an easy way. If there's like a listing online, chances are it's already too late. I think the best way is to pursue lots of leads while they're cold, which is to say that you need to be talking to studios before they know what they need. So me working on Doom 1 and Doom 2 happened because I had 8 separate canceled dinner plans with the developers at Nerve. They kept canceling on me, but I kept rescheduling, and eventually they kept one meeting. And then they got to tell me about what their studio was all about, and I got to tell them what our studio was all about. And then kind of by accident, they're like, oh, hey, like based on what you just told us, you might be helpful in this thing that we might be starting soon. But they weren't totally sure. And then turns out their last project was taking too long and they really needed someone to start on it right now. And I was at the right place at the right time. And I think a lot of that's that. You're going to need to do a lot of networking, which I hate. I'm bad at networking. I just am. I suck at it. But you got to do it. You just got to like talk to people, touch base with people, and just be around. Because the big thing is that once a job's been posted, they're going to hire someone. Realistically, you want to be the person that someone goes, oh, we need someone to solve this problem. And they go, oh, hey, we know someone. And that's how you land contract work. And it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of seeding. If you need contract work right now and you don't have contract work right now, you're not going to find contract work right now. You need to like start looking for contract work way before you need it, and hopefully you'll land it when you need it. And that's what goes into it.
Right. All right. We have a few here from one of our officers, Ellie. First one of which is, how do you handle stuff like health insurance and other things that are often connected to salary jobs with larger studios? You know, the fun stuff. Starting an indie studio is something that's always been their main goal, but healthcare especially has been a big point of concern going indie for them.
I mean, if you're under 25, that's magic. If you're under 25 and you got awesome parents, stay on your parents' insurance. I did that for a little while when I first started. But after that, I mean, if you're like, depends on the size of your studio. When we were 7 people full time, and granted at this point we had money from a publisher helping us pay our bills. We at that point were able to go to a company that provided health insurance to small businesses, and we were just able to get health insurance for everyone. Now, that's obviously like kind of a stretch thing. Like once you're already in the groove of things and you actually have employees. Before then, you're stuck with you can go to private brokers, but for the most part, you're stuck with Obamacare, which like I love the idea of. I want to get into politics for the sake of keeping everyone here in case we got anyone that disagrees. But I personally really love like the idea of universal healthcare and all that crap. I am super excited and proud that I'm on the Obamacare marketplace, but the plans tend to be pretty expensive and aren't that great. And a lot of that's due to whatever. There's a whole rant there, but you're kind of stuck buying from the marketplace, so there's not really a way around that. It's just kind of what it is. Yeah, and that's not like a super fun answer. Healthcare is like it's one of the things that people don't think about for indie development. I do want to answer more of Ellie's questions, but I saw that Nick Culberson, hi Nick, asked, would I do Kickstarter again? If so, any tips? I want to answer that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would I do Kickstarter again? No. Maybe is kind of the answer. Honestly, I feel like Kickstarter is not a great place to secure funds, but it is a great place to validate your idea. If you can't raise some money on Kickstarter, chances are your game's probably not going to do too great when it comes out anyways. So I think Kickstarter can be a really great place to test out your idea and also to secure some money for like cons and stuff. We did Kickstarter and we were able to put that money towards buying hotel rooms and going to conventions. And that got us the money that we needed to be able to go to enough conventions, to talk to enough publishers, to eventually get a publisher that helped us actually finish the game. But in reality, we did need a publisher to finish the game. And we were taking a risk with the money that we asked because we had to ask a smaller amount. And I was stubborn. I was going to finish that game no matter what. But it might have resulted in me working on it for 5 years by myself with no help. And that's tough. So would I do it again? Maybe. I think it's kind of neat. You can secure a little bit of money earlier on, but you're responsible to a lot of people, and you wind up making a lot of promises to people earlier on in development that you might want to change for the sake of the game actually being better, but then people might get pissed off at you because you change stuff, even though the game's better because of it, all that. I think there's a lot of ups and downs to it, but my tip would be do it for marketing, do it for promotion, do it if you need some money to help you go to conventions, but you better be ready to finish that game if you're going to do it. I think the big thing for us is that when we did our Kickstarter, we got out press kits to everyone, and we were to the point to where we were following writers from games journalism websites on Twitter, and we were engaging with all their posts, and we were DMing them, and we got to know a few of them, and we were kind of like really trying to make it so that like when we sent them our press kit, someone there knew who we were, even if it was just us like responding to tweets, like just like, oh hey, like they just, even like if they had to make a decision after that, we weren't gunning for favoritism. We just wanted them to recognize us for us to stand out a little bit. And just about none of those people came through for us. But one person at Rock Paper Shotgun came through for us. What, like out of like the tens of press kits that we sent out, Rock Paper Shotgun wrote an article using our press kit. And then Kotaku, everyone else stole they just like pretty much copy and pasted the article. They're like, oh hey, look, Rock Paper Shotgun wrote this. Then they get one of their junior writers or something to just like write the exact same article. It was like a wave. You could tell like Rock Paper Shotgun did it, and then suddenly everyone else went. It was not, oh, we landed everyone. It was we landed one. So I think one of my big tips is like, if you want to like generate like Forks game, which I talked about, I had on one of the slides earlier. Gun and Slinger, thank you, is either currently on Kickstarter or just wrapped up. It should be wrapping up soon. He was amazing at getting his game in front of lots of people. He went on multiple podcasts. He went to like really grassroots, tiny, small places that talked about board games and marketed to as many of those people as he could. And I say that just kind of similar to us. I think there's just like a lot of grassroots that goes into it. And it's kind of a good test run for learning how to market your game, honestly. So be ready, have a plan. Don't just throw it up there and hope you make money, because it's not going to work. It's pretty much like releasing your game. Sorry, long answer. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess going back to Ellie's questions, talking again more about them starting up indie studio. What should they look for most in people to build a team with? They're surrounded by a bunch of great people, with great kind hearts. So team culture isn't really an aspect they're too concerned about. But what should they look for on more everyday side of things and hiring people, putting together a team?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you can't discriminate on people. You can't discriminate people based on their politics or whatever. But obviously you don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of alt-right trolls, especially if you're going to like start a business together. You want to have people that you vibe with, that like creatively are on the same page as you. I think a big thing there is like, I think even if you feel like you vibe with them as a person, I think there's a really big gap between like getting along with them as like good people and then getting along with them in like just crunch, working late, getting through stuff. I don't think people should crunch themselves, but like it's kind of tough to get around. Like you're going to push yourself, you're going to work hard, you're going to be wanting to make progress on your thing every single day. And finding people that have that kind of work ethic and have that kind of drive over long periods of time is something that I think you can really only learn by either seeing the way that they apply themselves to their own projects or by having experience with them. So things that I would look for in people that you're building a team with, I think drive. I think a big thing really is drive. I think how much do people care? How excited do people get? Like, do you not need to babysit people? Because like if someone's not willing to like learn Git and like, oh, well, you put it in for me, or they're really not driving, they're not like, oh, what's next? What do I do next? If they're not excited, if you're kind of having to like hold their hand a little bit, I would just cut that off, man. You want someone that pushes you and inspires you and is as driven as you are. And if people just aren't there, I think, granted, there's kind of a spectrum of the way that people communicate, and you can be more considerate to that. But, it's tough and it's a long road, and you really don't want slack. You really don't want to have to worry about feeding mouths that aren't going to contribute in a meaningful way. So look for people that you feel like make you better and challenge you and solve problems that you know that you can't solve. You don't need 3 people with the exact same skill set making a game. You just don't. So look for a diverse set of people. I know it's a little bland, but I think just really make games with people and use your own intuition and be willing to be a little cutthroat with it. I don't like treating people that way, but you kind of got to be willing to cut people out if you need to. Yeah. So that's the answer.
Hard, but yeah.
Just do game jams, do vibe checks.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else we got?
All right. One more from Ellie.
Awesome.
What are your opinions on a co-op structure? It's something that's always appealed to them, and it feels like a good way to run things, but I don't have a very clear vision on what hirings or firings will look like, and then eventually that the team needs to grow or shrink, or if somebody isn't a good fit.
The studio co-op, KO_OP, gave a GDC talk that's definitely worth watching on this. Granted, I think that they are like hardcore lefties that really intensely advocate for doing a co-op. I personally actually recently looked into founding a co-op as a game studio. just out of curiosity what that would look like. For the most part, the answer that I got back from my lawyers was that there's a lot of burden and overhead that goes into founding an actual co-op, and it's probably an overhead that you don't want to deal with. Another structure that you can do is something called a Series LLC. Series LLCs are pretty new, so you may not find a lot of articles on this. It sounds like you're wanting to do indie. Like, ping me afterwards, hang out in Society of Play. Let's talk about it more. But I would love to hook you up with my lawyer. She's just really great. She works with a lot of tech startups. I should have put their info on these slides, actually, because they're great. I want to send them business. If anyone here is looking to start a business and you're looking for either someone to help you out with your taxes or a lawyer, I know lawyers and tax people that are great and they're awesome. They work with tech startups and small business all the time. I would love to send more people their way. But from what I've done in research with co-ops, it's just not... there's more overhead than it's worth. You're better off doing something like a Series LLC. Granted, the people have done it and they love it. So go watch that talk, do some research on your own, make your own decision there. The way they handled it was effectively everyone gets like an equal share of revenue. And like, so if you join, and it's not like of projects that they work on, it's like all company revenue. So when you brought someone in, they had to be really cautious who they brought in. If I remember correctly, they never talked about firing. I think they just have been really lucky because their games have done pretty well. And at the time of the talk, they'd done a lot of growing and not a lot of shrinking. So I could definitely see that being something that's a little tough. Now, Series LLC, what's nice about Series LLC is that you effectively have an LLC, big company up here, and then you've got Series LLCs that are smaller little baby companies underneath it. And they're actually all under one umbrella, but in the end, you can actually have each individual series own its own intellectual property and have its own unique revenue splits. So what you can do is say, all right, I'm collaborating with this subset of people, and we're going equal split on this like a regular business. But the thing is, they don't own the top level business. They own the smaller one down here. And what that allows you to do is that whenever that game makes money, you can split that revenue equally, but you don't necessarily have to worry about having those people stick with you for all of eternity of you founding this business. So if you want to collaborate with someone on a project, you can collaborate with them on a project and do a revenue split on that project, but then still be building this larger business. And if they continue to collaborate, then you keep using that series. And if maybe someone wants to pursue other things, instead of having to worry about doing all this stuff of them divesting and selling their stocks, and maybe it turns out they're a jerk and they feel like they're owed like 20% of your business for all of eternity, even though like you've got a long ways to go to finish building your business, and suddenly you've got this like weird appendage of someone that's being a stubborn jerk. Like you might be better off just saying, all right, cool, like so-and-so left us, so we're going to shelve this Series LLC and just start a new one right here that's everyone except that one person and same umbrella company, and you get to keep going from there. But obviously talk to a lawyer, but maybe check out Series LLCs too, and that might be another direction to go. With all that one.
It's pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Got one from the Discord from Victoria. This one's interesting. How do I know which contest to enter when it comes to game development? I don't know if they mean like game jams and stuff like that. They've seen
So there's a whole like indie circuit, and I know people that run it. I have not. Luckily, my publisher did a lot of this for me. But there's a whole like indie circuit, and the idea is that you like take your game, you go to PAX South, you go to PAX East, you go to PAX West, you go to GDC, you go to wherever, all these big conventions. There's like a big German one or whatever, and you like enter into all these contests of like, all right, like best multiplayer game on the show floor of whatever, and there's like a bunch of different contests. You can do game pitch contest where you take your game and you pitch it to a panel of people, then they pick out their favorite game. You can submit to all these different things. So that's like kind of what they're talking about. Yeah, I mean, submit to what you think you can win. And the question is really, do you need to win? I mean, maybe it helps you with like press, so it's probably a good idea. And maybe it helps you get more acknowledgement from publishers. I didn't necessarily go down the route of doing it. I think for the most part, people are going to take you at the merit of what you're pitching, because there's going to be some people with awesome games that don't have a bunch of awards. But if you're going to go like genuinely indie and never get a publisher and never get anyone to help you out with anything, and you're going to market the game yourself, it will probably help you get taken more seriously by games journalists. But I do think in the end, there's a lot of indies with a million different awards on their plate. So, it's probably good. I don't have a great answer on knowing which ones to apply to, but I think the big thing is choose what conventions you want to go to. and then apply to every contest that's at that convention that you think you even have a remote shot of winning, regardless. Just apply to everything. Just got to hustle on it. And, it may not be bad, just to be applying to as much stuff as physically possible. It doesn't hurt to apply, unless something has like a fee, then it's just a question of whether you think you have a shot. I think you're better off applying to more than less. So I think it's less of a which ones, and it's just more of how many can you. The more the merrier. It's not like they're going to like, give you like, oh, this person lost, and then like that shows up on your Steam page or something. Like, no, like you don't have to tell anyone that you applied. You just forget about it, So just apply to a lot of them.
Right. All right. I've got another one in the Twitch chat. Between work-life balance, do you find time to try and play new games to inspire you? And if so, do you have a specific priority on what kinds of games you intake?
Mm-hmm.
I know you talked about like unique games and stuff earlier. I don't know if that goes into that or.
For a while, I realized that I'd just been beating Dark Souls 1 over and over and over and not playing any other game for like a year straight.
Sounds about right.
Sometimes you get into a rut like that. Sometimes you need that soul food to just fill that hole in your heart where like you're working on your 300th like PS4 rendering bug and you've just stopped being creative years ago. I found myself doing a lot of D&D too. Sometimes finding creative outlets is important because a lot of times making games gets really heartless. There's just portions of making games that just stop being fun. So sometimes it's good to find creative outlets like D&D. I mean, play Dungeon World instead of D&D, but, check out indie tabletops. That's not even answering the question. But, I do look for creative outlets. I look to play new things. Something I've been doing with Summer recently is that because she has a bunch of games that she wants me to play and I have a bunch of games that I want her to play, but neither of us really want to take the time to play each other's games, we just take turns. Effectively, the contract is like, all right, you're going to play my game and we're going to beat it, and then we're going to play your game and we're going to beat it. And we're just going to take turns making each other play games. And it might be new games, it might be old games. But yeah, I think you got to set aside time to just like play a game once a week, to play things that are inspiring. I think it's also nice that like if you got a game idea that you're kind of vibing with, find as many references as you can, things that are good inspiration, and just like actually go play those games, Like you can consider that a portion of development time. Granted, like playing like, every single like Sonic game ever made, like it's going to take a while and probably not be that productive, but like you can play some portion of it and like consider that making progress. Maybe you have a part of your to-dos is to do research and you set aside time for it and actually let that be a part of being productive. But, like if you got a day job, you get home, as long as you get home at a decent time, you can play games for an hour and then go development for a couple hours. You can make time for it. You just wind up with a lot of structured time, and I think you gotta try not to fight that. As far as what I'm playing, the new Paper Mario is awesome. I don't care what anyone says. Everyone go play the new Paper Mario. Like, I know it's not like an indie game at all, but like, it's really good. Everyone needs to go play it. Anyways, that's my answer.
All right.
Yeah, I know we're probably going a little late according to when we wanted to run, but we can keep taking questions so we run out for a little bit longer.
Give people, I don't see any more questions right now, but give people like a few minutes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, just to fill a bit of time. Just I haven't heard of Dungeon World. I'm a big fan of D&D, 5e, but
I'll talk about Dungeon World for a while.
Yeah, if you want to for a few minutes, see if anyone else has any questions. Absolutely.
So Dungeon World, Jesus Christ. If you want to play a tabletop RPG that focuses more on the story than it does combat simulation, I think one of the things I run into with D&D is that it works really well if everyone playing the game knows the rules really well, and also everyone really likes combat. Like, that's when D&D fucking shines. And actually, I think this is like a decent thing to note here, just from like a design standpoint, that actually, I'll tie this into something else. When you look at a D&D character sheet, literally spatially look at how much space each thing takes up. Like, how much space is dedicated to like role play? And the answer is like, oh, you got a whole sheet of like your look and your background, but like how much of that matters? And the answer is none of it. None of it matters. It's not worth anything. The only thing that matters on your character sheet is like your spells and like how hard your axe hits, like in your health.
Right.
Like the whole sheet's just beating the shit out of people. Like that's the whole, pardon my French, but like that's the whole character sheet. And similar to game development, like back when I was talking earlier about like setting your priorities straight, like what like what do your players care about? Like I talked about Undertale earlier. Like Undertale pretty much exclusively spends times on things that players care about. It is really effective at focusing in on what players care about and spending time there and cutting scope and doing crappy animations and not giving a crap about anything else. It's everything else is lazy. It's whatever. We want to do this. We want to have fun, quirky dialogue and have weird attacks that are tied to the personalities of the characters, and we're going to focus on the writing and all that. The music, like that's where all the focus is. Whereas like for something like D&D, the focus is on punching shit. But if you're like me, you like role play. You like the creativity of it. And I like the conflict. I like the conflict's really important to me. I like the peril. I like character death. I like things that define D&D, but I hate when you like start a combat and then that's like the next 3 hours of what you're playing. So Dungeon World's really nice because it has no initiative. When you start combat, you just like, it's very like just ebb and flow. You don't like jump into initiative and then take turns. Literally the DM's only allowed to attack when someone else fails a roll. So if you like jump in and then you like just are landing every attack, you're just like critting on everything and you're just fucking dunking on these kobolds, then like the kobolds will never even get to attack you. They'll just like get beat up by you and you'll just like have this amazing power fantasy of being awesome at everything. But if you have like average rolls, that's when like the kobolds get to attack back. The DM never rolls. The DM never has a turn. The DM like acts in response to what the players do. And it's really great because it just keeps things moving and it has more of a conversational flow to it. Also making characters is super fast. Check out Dungeon World. It's a great RPG. Also like to like different inspiration sources. Like don't just look to video games. Like video games, like everyone's playing video games. Everyone that makes video games plays video games. Look at other things, read books, watch movies, like consume quality content from other like avenues and try to find inspiration in other places. Also, I could talk about dice rolls in Dungeon World for an eternity. Looks like we had another question maybe.
Yeah, we got a couple in, but appreciate that. I might have to look into that for sure. Someone asks, who was someone that you looked up to as a mentor?
You know, it's tough. I don't know how much of that I've held on to. I think I've had a lot of really big life events for me, like in the process of all this, and I won't dive into a lot because it's generally just a little too much for me to trudge through. But I think a lot of who I looked up to has kind of changed over time. I do think my dad is a really big one. I think he just the way that he always pursued business and like granted a lot of the advice that he gave me I wouldn't give to other people. Like one of the things he told me, we used to work on editing videos together, and you know we'd be working on it like 4 days straight, like hardly any sleep, and we'd be driving home and like he'd literally be seeing like illusionary deer running into the middle of the road that didn't exist just due to sleep deprivation. One of the things he always told me was like, oh, you know, I was like, oh, I didn't have time to do it. And he'd be like, oh, well, like you slept, didn't you? You had time to do it. My dad was a bit mental. He was very much had a lot of like Polish engineering blood in him. And I always found that really inspirational. And obviously that work ethic's actually for game devs pretty toxic and something you really got to check at some point. But I think the drive is important. I think you got to pursue self-care more than that. But my dad, you know, really like helped me like get through a lot of the business side of this early on. He really helped me get through a lot of it. So I'll just say my dad, and like obviously like not everyone has awesome dads, and like you know it's just that's how it is. But I also look to, I think a lot of the people that I looked up to were just bad examples. I think that's part of it. A lot of this talk is me saying things that I wish I'd done better about. So I think a lot of the people I used to look up to as mentors, I just like can't in good conscience advise that. So I'm gonna not. Yeah, kind of a dodge, but my dad was awesome.
Fair enough. All right. Another question from Avocado. Have you ever thought about branching off into publishing, like publishing like other indie studios?
You know, we talked about it at one point. Granted, we had a publisher and they handled a lot of that, so I don't think we really built up in-house the skills to do that for other people. So the short answer is no, just because like we didn't really in-house that. I do think, just to kind of use this as a tangent and talk about something else, one really big piece of advice I'd love to give to everyone is that don't rely on getting a publisher, because publishers are nice. They can help you out with marketing and a lot of stuff. But I think one of the things I realized that if you need a publisher to finish your game, if your plans to make a game good enough to get someone else to invest in you to help you finish your game. The problem is that you need an investor. And when you deal with publishers that might want to invest in your game, you're going to need them. And when you enter into negotiations, it's going to put you in a really difficult spot. I think the more that you can focus on developing your game in a way that you can complete it on your own, that you do not emphasis on need someone, that would be nice, but you don't need it to help you finish your vision, that will put you in a much better space for bargaining and for negotiating. And also, there's a lot of publishers out there that are really tiny little indie publishers, and a lot of them don't do that much. They're going to want 30% of your revenue to send out some press kits and then like stop working on it. In the end, there's going to be a lot of people. 30% is huge, and some of them want even more. And even if they take less, still, even at like 15%, that's a lot of your revenue. They don't take a flat amount. They want to cut, and some of them aren't going to do too much. And it's kind of like finding someone to work with for your team. You got to know that they're reputable and that they're really going to bust their asses off marketing your game. So, I know that's a bit of a tangent from what they asked, but I think it's important to know that your publisher is working hard at and like is just awesome, and be wary of indie publishers because a lot of them aren't very good. And I know so many horror stories of indie publishers signing contracts and then not fulfilling their side of the contract, but just leaving on red a bunch of developers, and then they can't get free of this exclusive publishing contract they have, and they literally wind up killing their whole game because this publisher just decided not to work on something even though they had an exclusive contract for it. So be really careful and just don't rely on them, because the less you rely on them, the better you'll put yourself in for better position you'll put yourself in for negotiating. Big rant. My publisher was awesome though; they're good. Aspire.
Nice.
I do think actually also something else I'd love to advocate for. This is new. Yeah. This is like a new thing that this hasn't been around for too long. But if you find yourself looking for a publisher, really look for one, because a lot of them, what they'll do, they'll invest in you, and then what they're going to say is that they want to make their money back before you start splitting money, which makes sense. If they give you like $300,000 to finish your game or whatever, like it could be a lot less, $50,000, $10 million, whatever, made up numbers are made up. But if someone gives you $300,000 to finish your game, they're going to say like, all right, we want to make our money back and a little bit of extra before we start splitting money. Like that makes sense. Like they're fronting cash, they're making an investment, they want to make it back before like you start seeing anything. It's like paying back a loan. It kind of makes sense. Tough thing is that you're going to run into is that until you make that $150,000, you're not going to have anything after development. You're just not going to have money, and that's tough. And that's just the way things were for quite a while for most. But there have been a few indie publishers recently that are making core contracts where they'll say, all right, we want to make our money back, but we're going to do an 80-20 split. So effectively, like, we'll take 80% until we make back the loan, and then we'll go to a more equitable split. But you'll get to keep 20% or whatever. You'll get to make some money until we make that back. That way you can kind of subsist as a studio. That is new. That is still rare. I would personally not take another publishing contract until I have terms like that, because I just think that that's where indies need to be advocating for. And I think if someone's not giving you a deal like that, you should walk, unless it's someone super awesome like Adult Swim and you're just willing to have a crappy contract because you just want to work with them. But like anything short of that, like you need to make money day one. You need to be on the first check cut for your game so you can start making money to pay people. It does look like we might be a little short on questions at this point. That's fine. I've been talking for a long time. I will say, just to wrap this up again, it sounds like we have quite a few people that are interested in doing indie. And as people get their internet back and VOD this or whatever, come hang out with me. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter. I should also say that, oh boy, I should have done a slide with all this. Join the Society of Play. Oh my goodness, so many slides. Jeez. Where is it? Oh no. Where am I? Oh gosh, I don't know where it's at. I think it's at the end. Hold up. We're going to find it. There we go. All right. Jeez. Sorry. Find me on Twitter. Hit me up with any questions. I'm very chatty. You can also find links to the Society of Play on there. I'm also in the SGDA Discord. If you guys want to if you're looking for mentors, you want to talk about it, you want to just like continue this conversation and maybe even get more specific with what you're doing, let me know. I'll make time for y'all. Is there anything else on the SGDA side of things to say before we wrap up?
SGDA wise, I will just say, I appreciate everyone for coming into this talk. Sorry for the technical difficulties. It's hard to do when an entire apartment complex's internet goes out. Whoops. But yeah, appreciate y'all coming out. Again, check Discord. We have announcements for the t-shirts, and then next week will be a social. And then we have more talks and things coming up like that. I really appreciate you, Tyler, for blocking out some time this evening to come and give a wonderful talk.
Insane.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the time, and thanks for letting me talk to everyone. It's been great. Thanks for everyone that watched. Thanks for dealing with technical difficulties and hanging out. Appreciate y'all. Later, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.